Okay, well, we're just joking about the timers. I am such a I am such a snob when it comes to timers. You know why I like the West Bend though? There's actually a reason. Okay. There's not just because I like the fact that it counts down, which I think is super important for kids and everyone, but I like them because they are like a rubber button. Kids can like use them usually. They're like easier to use. So I do have a real reason for it. I can't stand the timer. Like I can't stand timers where you have to like push the button to like get to a certain amount. Oh, it drives me insane. Okay, anyway, I could literally rant about timers for like a solid 30 minutes. All right, everyone. Well, welcome to today. I'm so excited. We're gonna wrap up our code of conduct behavior month with Spencer. Um, we are gonna talk today about really a topic that you don't really hear about a lot in the world of parenting, I think, but really about the relationship that you have with your child and the respect and how to cultivate respect and trust, right? I think that it's so under talked about, but I think especially when you have a child who can't communicate or has trouble, like one of the things we'll talk about later, but one of the things that when I work with parents in the home, one of the big questions often is like, is this behavior or is this the brain injury, right? Because it's a big question sometimes. We don't really always know. We can guess, but we don't always know for sure. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Spencer and I have some questions for Spencer, and then we'll get into a live Q&A at the end. But, we love interaction. We love questions while we're talking. So feel free to, drop in the chat, and we'll definitely talk about those. So Spencer, just to kickstart, what makes you interested in this topic of improving the relationship, with your kid, with your child? Why is it so important?
Yeah, I think that I remember when you and I were choosing the topic of this webinar. For a second I thought about not calling it "How to Improve Your Relationship with Your Child" because I was afraid that some parents would just look at the title and say, "Oh, I've got a good relationship with my kid," and so what's the point? But I think that the parent-child relationship is the most important relationship that exists. But we often don't talk about it as a relationship. And parents often, when they're looking at behavior specifically, they are looking for practical techniques that they can implement to improve behavior. How do I decrease temper tantrums? How do I increase cooperation and following of instructions and things like that? And that's all important. But I think that getting real transformation in a child's behavior is impossible without looking at the parent-child relationship. And I think that a lot of relationships are more strained than parents realize, because I think parents think, I love my child, therefore our relationship is strong. And love, of course, is the most important part of any relationship. But that alone won't raise a child who's mature and caring and confident. And so, yeah, that's why I kind of wanted to do a deep dive into relationships and talk specifically about parents and kids.
Yeah, I think it's really important to bring that up. I find when I'm in the home with families, I find the older the child is, the more strained it gets. And that kind of makes sense. I think that's not really just for kids with special needs. I think that's like across the board. But it's so easy. I see so much frustration on both sides. And one of the things that always really resonated with me that Agatha Delgado said that she was on a few months ago, she's like, there's no way to do this program without transforming yourself. And I think that in many ways, maybe the code of conduct and the behavior stuff that we teach actually transforms the parents the most, because you can't put a rule on a kid you're not willing to follow. You know, like I'm often in a household where they're like, oh, the kid screams, and I'm like, okay, is anyone else screaming here? Right? It's like
Yeah.
it's like, well, yeah, it's such a yeah, it's such a big transformation. So when it comes to trust and respect, what does it look like to you? Like what are we trying to achieve in all of this?
Okay, so what what you just kind of pointed to, the most important thing in any relationship, doesn't matter if it's a husband, wife, parent, child, best friends, the two elements that are most important are trust and respect. If trust is strong and respect is strong, the relationship is strong. And if trust is weak and respect is weak, then the relationship is weak. And by the way, this isn't me or even you, Morgan. Like this has been pretty well understood for a while amongst relationship coaches and life coaches, and it's definitely something that I found to be the case. And I've this starts back with our grandfather Glenn, but he always talked about the importance of respecting children. And I kind of realized that, I've been telling parents to respect their kids for years, but I've never really defined it. I think we all kind of know what respect is by how it feels when we feel it for someone else or when they demonstrate it to us. But I'd never really given a parents a definition of what respect is. And everyone who took the Doman method course might remember one of the last lectures I give, I talk to parents about trading in pity for respect, and stop pitying your kids, feeling sorry for them, because you can't really pity someone and respect someone simultaneously. You can respect someone and have empathy for them, okay, but the act of pitying of, oh my, oh that poor person, oh that's terrible, it's very hard to hold respect for someone at the same time as pity. So I do want to differentiate empathy and pity, because sometimes people think, you can't have empathy, and of course you can. So yeah, respect is very important. And so I came up with the working definition today while I was walking my dog. So this is a working definition in the sense that that I might change it in the future. But I believe when you respect someone, you recognize. So there are kind of three components to it. You recognize, you appreciate, and you expect their highest form of self. Or another way of saying that is the best version of themselves. Okay, so you recognize it, meaning when it's there, you see it, right? You appreciate it, meaning you show your appreciation for the person when they are that best version of themselves. And the third, and just as important, is you expect that of them. And when you have those three things, recognition, appreciation, and expectation of the best version of the person, then I think there's true respect there. And we can, if we take this definition of respect, we can all think of that, I guess for lack of a better term, the tiger parent who expects the very best of their children, but doesn't recognize it or appreciate it. Like they expect them to go to Harvard. But if the child brings home an A on the report card, they're like, okay. But if they bring home a B, they scream at the kid, right? So that's a person who expects the best version of that child, but doesn't recognize it or appreciate it, right? And that's really damaging for a relationship. And then on the other side, there are people who kind of like recognize and appreciate the best versions of children, but they don't expect it. Like I've had this a couple times where I'll have like a parent in my office and I'll say, oh, how's Michael's behavior? By the way, when I use names, I'm just making up a name, not using a real child's name. But I'll say, like, how's Michael's behavior? And the mom will say, oh, he's wonderful, he's great, as Michael is smacking her in the face, and screaming, yeah, he's such a great kid, as she's getting punched. And I'm like, oh, and he never does this, it's just now. And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, he only punches you in public. Yeah, okay. I doubt that. So it is possible for certain parents to recognize and appreciate it, but they don't expect it. And so that's kind of what I think is really important for respect. And by the way, I think everyone should just like write that down. When you respect someone, you recognize, you appreciate, and you expect the best from them. And if you're lacking in one of those areas, and I think, Maureen, we can drill down a lot more into like practical ways of showing respect, but I think it's really important that people understand what respect is.
Yeah, I really like that definition because I think it's kind of the trifecta, and also it's kids know really fast if someone respects them. Like they know within minutes, and I'm sure a lot of you have had this instance where your child does not like someone from the moment they meet them. And I think that is a really interesting way. I think it's the expectation that's very easy to see. Sometimes I see people around brain injured children or adults, and I automatically know they're not good with them because they don't expect them to do the right thing. They kind of are expecting bad behavior. And in many ways, that's very much the kiss of death when it comes to bad behavior. Because I feel like then the kid's like, well, you don't expect me to do anything right, so I'm just gonna like blow this all thing up. So I think that's really, really important. So to switch gears a little bit to trust, how does that look to you?
So trust obviously is your faith in the other person, that they're going to kind of stand by their word. And I think that if someone asked me what's the bigger issue between most parents and children, with families on our program, I would say it's probably more respect than it is trust. There are children that grow up in homes with serious issues of trust, where parents who aren't there for the child, or who are cruel, and the children don't respect them. And fortunately, like, we don't have to work with that often. But what I do see frequently is that damages trust is, first of all, threatening and not following through is, saying like, if you do that again, I'm going to do this, and then not following through. Well, you've just damaged your trust because you've just said, I'm going to do something, and you didn't do it. And Morgan will know who I'm talking about, but we have some family members who, they used to threaten their children. They'd come over for family parties with their kids, and they'd threaten the children constantly. If you do that again, I'm going to take it and throw you in the car. And they never did anything. And the children were terrible. Like, the kids would like be there smiling, like, humiliating their parents in public. And we were horrified watching them, even as kids, like, wow, I can't believe anyone could disrespect their parents like this. But that was just obviously making a threat, not following through. Now, by the way, like, I think threatening shouldn't, you don't want to use a threat because that's kind of your last resort. I will get into maybe a bit of an exception for that, but but yeah, so not following through, and I'll say as well, lying. There seems to be this kind of societal acceptance that lying to kids is okay, where the most common lie that a parent tells their child is 5 minutes. Oh, we'll do that in 5 minutes. And then the child realizes very quickly that's a lie. And then the parent is like amazed when they ask the child to wait 5 minutes to do something, and the child doesn't respect that, because the child has just learned that's not true. So
Yeah,
those kind of things can damage trust.
I really, and something I'm hearing, I have something to say about the lie. But the first thing I heard there was like, when there's a lack of trust or a breach of trust, that really hurts respect. It makes
Yes.
respect, and that's when I think kids start to very much disrespect their parents, when the trust is shaky. What do they really mean here, right? And to talk about the lying thing, for me, obviously lying to kids in general is not a good idea because it will backfire. But I think for kids with special needs, it is so confusing. Like, they're already in a disorganized world, and now you're making it more disorganized. And so for me, it's like, oh my gosh, it's not only for them hard to deal with, but it causes more chaos in their life. That's why I really like to say to parents, you're just not doing them any favors. You're not doing yourself any favors. And I always think of I just, especially with, it's funny you bring up time, because sometimes parents will complain to me that their children don't have any sense of time. And I'm like, but if you're lying to them about how much time is there, it's
Right.
gonna get so confusing, in general. So we sometimes have to it can take a lot of time to backtrack and kind of create that trust again when that's happened. And I know the idea is like, oh, I feel so guilty, I've been doing that. It's okay, start tomorrow. You can change things tomorrow. There's always a new day, so don't feel bad about it. I just think it is such a good point.
Yeah. And the other things that I have down about trust, besides being honest and not lying, not making idle threats, sticking to agreements and obligations is really important. If you say to your child, if you do this, we're going to do this.
Yeah,
You got to stick to that.
Don't create
Yeah.
privileges you can't follow through with.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Right.
don't do that. Yeah, totally.
I also have, this is not going to maybe be so applicable for parents with older children, although it might. But there are tiny things that parents do that can really damage trust. Like, very often in my office, I'll see parents pull things out of their children's hands without asking them first. Like, I'll say, oh, let's do this evaluation. And the parent will just go and pull something out of the child's hands and be like, hey, Michael, pay attention. And I'm like, wow, if I don't know at any point that, like, imagine if like Melissa just came and ripped my phone out of my hand, like, that's going to really damage trust. So I do think sometimes you have to think, okay, would I do this with any other human being? And if the answer is no, then maybe you're doing certain things that would damage trust.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. So important. Yeah. So talking about that, like, let's go to the practical. Wait, is there anything else you wanted to say around this before we get into the practical stuff?
Well, we've kind of launched a little bit into it already, but
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think the practical side of this is so important to really like make changes
Yeah.
tomorrow morning, if you want to wake up and make some changes. So where do you think parents should start from that viewpoint?
Well, let's talk a little bit about respect,
Okay.
because respect is, like I said, respect is it has to do with how we feel about someone, right? It's recognition, appreciation, and expectation of them. So first of all, we do have to make sure that deep down we have those feelings about the person. Like, we have to make sure internally we have respect. When we have that, it's going to we're going to demonstrate that a lot more in our behavior. So we, of course, we're going to go through practical things, but I do have to say here that a lot of parents are going to have to do some personal work here with how they view their child, and really kind of investigate if they don't recognize their child enough or appreciate them or expect more of them. You do have to start like looking at that within and asking yourself why, and because if you can resolve that within yourself, it's going to demonstrate a lot more in your behavior. But getting into the practical things, how do we show respect for a child? So here are some just things that came to me. First of all, listening. Listening is, like, there's no one who you respect that you wouldn't listen to, right? If they were talking to you. So when they're trying to communicate something, and children are especially sensitive to this, they can tell when someone is blowing them off and not paying attention to them. I remember once I was changing the diaper of my nephew. He was, like just turned 2. And he was saying something to me and I was going, but I was really mentally checked out. And he literally said my name like 5 times until he snapped me back into the moment and I was paying attention to him. And it really struck me like, wow, I could not fake that I was listening to him. Like he could see that in me. So children, by the way, children tend to be naturally drawn to adults who listen to them. And because they know that's a sign of respect. So that's the first thing. You've got to listen. It's not easy, especially when you're a parent and you've got 1,000 things going on, in your head at any given second. But that is crucial for demonstrating respect to someone. Now, the second thing, along with listening to the child, is making eye contact, right? That's one of our number one ways of showing respect. And also with children, it tends to be very good to get down to their level, especially when there's something important that you're trying to get across to them. I really find like a lot of teachers do this naturally. They kind of like get down on a knee and get face to face with a child. And I don't just mean when you're angry, although that can be a very good time to do it as well, to communicate something that you're upset about, but also as a way to just make sure that they're really connecting with you and that they see that you're fully focused on them in the moment. Okay. Morgan, feel free to interrupt me as I go through these.
Yeah, I really wanted to say something about the listening. One of the phrases that I heard for the first, I've heard this before, but my sister-in-law says to her kids, is tell me more. Those three words right there just open a whole world for your kid, and it shows so much respect. Tell me more. Like, I want to know more about what is going on internally, and it can really help really with anything. And if your kid is a facilitated communicator or they're talking, either way, it just opens this world for them to know, oh, mom wants to hear what I have to say. And I find that it's so great. It's also really great to use with your spouse if they're angry about something.
Yeah.
It's a really great phrase because I don't know, it's so unthreatening. Sometimes it can be like, tell me what you mean, can feel very threatening, or what do you mean, and so it's just a great phrase, tell me more. So I just want to
that's good. Yeah, thank you. I like that. The next thing that I have is asking for their opinion whenever possible, right? When we respect someone, first of all, we want to get their opinions because we're interested in them. But for children, this often means just giving them choices whenever it's possible, right? One just easy way of showing respect to a child is, instead of saying, get down and do your crawling, to say, listen, we've got to do, crawling and brachiation. What would you like to do first? It's just a very simple way of showing respect. And for many children, that alone will get rid of about 50% of behavioral issues if they were just asked what they want or what they're thinking.
Yeah, and this is actually especially important for children who can't speak yet. Um, because like I remember I was working with this little girl. She had a few words of speech, but she wasn't, speaking sentences yet. And I was like, "What do you think?" And she looked at me shocked. And
Mm-hmm.
it's because she's so smart. Like she's literally like she's the kind of kid who's in a room and is obviously the smartest person in the room. And she looked at me and she couldn't tell me. She didn't even try because she knew she couldn't say it. But in that moment, she knew I knew she was so smart. And that's what's really important. I get teary eyed thinking about it. But it's just, you can ask the question even if your kid can't communicate it yet.
Hmm.
You know?
Yeah, and it's hard for us adults because we don't have many situations where we're kind of closed out. It's hard for us to put ourselves in a child's shoes and know how that feels when no one ever asks you questions or asks about what you're thinking. But maybe something which is a little similar. If you've ever been with a group of people who I've had this experience before because I travel a lot for work, but others may not. But if you've ever been with a group of people who speak your language, but they all speak in another language, and you're kind of excluded from the conversation, it feels very lonely. And also, when they all speak your language, it feels disrespectful because it's like, hey, I'm here. Why are you not including me in this conversation? And usually at a certain point, you'll say, all right, like these people are jerks. Like, I don't want to waste my time with these people. And then you're in a bad mood, And so I think a lot of kids kind of experience that all the time. And they kind of feel like they're outsiders looking in. And that creates frustration and annoyance with everyone else.
Yeah, I think it's such a good point. Yeah, it makes me think of like, Spencer, you probably don't know what this is like, but when you get like picked last for a sports team,
Yeah.
it's kind of like that.
I've had that
Spencer
once.
doesn't know because he's
once.
always chosen first, but kind of just being left out of the whole situation.
I've had that once or twice.
One time it happened to him. That's nice.
Yeah. um, so, okay, the next thing for showing respect is recognizing and emphasizing effort when it's made. I think that this is a major issue with a lot of families on our program. The children are putting in a lot of effort and they're not getting a lot of recognition for it because it's just kind of expected. The parents kind of like, all right, we do 20 inclined floors every day, or we do this much crawling and creeping every day. And it's just kind of expected, And one really good way of showing someone respect is saying, wow, like, I'm so proud of you. Wow, you put in so much hard work. That's great. Something we've been saying for a while, but I recently saw a study in this regard, is that children's learning capabilities increase when they're complimented for effort rather than qualities. In other words, if a child comes home with an A on a grade, if you say to that child, wow, you worked so hard, like I really love how hard, all the effort you put into getting that A, that child will be much more likely to get another A than a child that you say, great job with the A, you're so smart, So yeah, and they've actually researched this and found that kids that get this kind of compliment do much better than kids where you're complimenting them for innate qualities. And we do that a lot with children. We'll say, you're so smart, you're so pretty. We'll kind of compliment them for innate qualities rather than saying, wow, you put in a lot of hard work. And complimenting someone for effort is a great way of showing respect. And to get everyone to think about this in a different way, if I ask you, why do you love someone? And then why do you respect them? A lot of the points might be different. And usually respect is based on effort. So for example, I'll use Morgan as an example because she's here. If someone said to me, why do you love Morgan? I would give more innate qualities. I'd say things like, she's loving, she's sweet, she's supportive, she's loyal, right? And all of those things are really important, but they're kind of qualities of Morgan's character. But if someone said, why do you respect Morgan? I'm going to focus more on things that require effort. So I'm going to say, she's a small business owner. She works really hard. She's always there for people when, they need her, right? All of those things require effort. And we don't, by the way, I mean, we can all think of that like loser in our family that no one respects. I'm sorry to use this language. I'm using it jokingly. But that person doesn't have respect of others because they don't give effort, right? That's when we lose respect for people. So the way we show respect is by recognizing effort when it's given. And I think that a lot of the time, if you're just expecting your kid to do things and not recognizing it, over the time, your child and you are going to pay a price for that, because your kid's going to just say, why am I going to keep putting in the effort if I'm not getting recognized?
Yeah, this is so, so big. And it's actually interesting. It's something our parents did really, really well. They were very good at showing us like, oh, you did a great job. And I think that it causes a very defeatist attitude in a lot of children, when
Mhm.
they don't get praised and they become very cynical, like, why should I even try, and you kind of, yeah, like, why should you? I mean, they have a really good point, and I think it's so, so important to even overdo it. I feel like it's better to overdo it than underdo it when it comes to, appreciating your child. And I will say this too, moms, like, a lot of Doman moms are type A personalities. We love you guys, but you guys don't give yourself enough recognition. You're not really praising yourself. You're probably not praising your spouse enough either. So it's not just about upping it with your kid, it's upping it with the whole family, your spouse, yourself, everyone. you know um Often I will see a mom say, oh, my grandparents don't help us, and I say, okay, um maybe they don't, but have they ever helped at all? Like, well, she used to bring Sunday night dinners over, but she doesn't do that anymore. And I was like, well, did you appreciate that? Did you really tell her how much you love that? Because I doubt someone would stop if they knew how much you loved it. So it's so, so, so important, not just from like, obviously with your child and cultivating that, it's so important, but this is really the CEOs, great CEOs, right? We talk about being the CEO of the program. It is great. CEOs know when to appreciate their employees. So, and I know, like, so many mothers who are successful with delegating, it's not just about handing something over, it's also about saying thank you so much for this, right? And so definitely up it there, but most importantly, give yourself props. Moms will come to me at the end of the day and go, oh my god, all these things went wrong, and I'm like, okay, but what went right? Right, let's start there. Let's give ourselves a little bit of a pat on the back, especially if you're finding yourself run down or feeling unmotivated. This is really, really important for you, not just for your kid, but for yourself. And the more we do it for ourselves, the easier it becomes for your kid too. So that's really, really important.
Yeah, and Morgan, along those lines, and I plan on getting to this in the conversation. Some people at this point might be saying, okay, we're talking all about like showing trust and respect to my child, but what about the other way?
Right.
And but that's why you've got to focus on your relationship with your child, because once you first of all, the more trust and respect you are, I don't know what to say, investing into the relationship, it will come back. It will come back to you, because as your child trusts you more and feels respected by you, they're going to be naturally more likely to send it back. But the other thing is, when you respect someone, you also expect the best from them, and so that allows you to. I'm not sure if we want to get into this right now, but
Yeah, let's
that
get
allows
into
you
it.
to.
Yeah.
Let's get into it. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's establish for a second that you've implemented the things that we've talked about, right? Where you're listening to your child more. No one's going to be perfect, but you're listening to them more, you're making more eye contact, you're getting down on their level, you're giving them choices whenever possible. You're recognizing and emphasizing their effort, right? All of those things. And your child is still not showing you the respect that you deserve, right? Well, what do we do when we've earned respect, right? When we've done what we should do, and another person isn't respecting us, what do we do? Well, we should demand respect, right? I mean, if we've done everything from our side to earn respect and it's not being given, it should be demanded. Like, it's not fair for us to get steamrolled over when we're doing everything from our side to show someone respect and they're not showing it back. I think that once a parent has demonstrated the respect to their kid, it's perfectly fine for them to start putting down very strong boundaries and saying, this is a boundary you don't cross. Or if the child does something which is very disrespectful, handling it in a way that demands respect. And I want to give two examples of this, and they're strong examples from my childhood where my mom kind of demanded respect from me because I went way over the line of what was expected. So American parents will understand how big a deal this is. I remember once, I was probably 11 or 12, and I don't remember what I did, but I was really disrespectful to my mom. Like, I was outrageous, like nasty, talking back. I don't remember what it was, but it was really bad, whatever it was. And I just remember her saying, you're not going out on Halloween. And Halloween in the US is a huge deal for kids. It's one night every year where you can go out and you just go, strangers give you free candy. Like, what a crazy idea and in the Doman household where we didn't have a lot of sugar, it was a big deal. It was, yeah, mom and dad let us eat. It was funny. Like, it was like the one night of the year you could get away with anything. Anyway,
Mom was smart. She just let us bomb like a night. We just eat it because like we never had it. Yeah. We just ate it in one night.
Yeah, exactly.
We didn't know how to save candy.
It was a disaster, yeah. But she was just like, you are not going out on Halloween. You've been so disrespectful, you're not going out. And I remember when she said that to me, I was like, she's gonna cave. Like, I'm just gonna work on her all day. I remember 11-year-old Spencer was like, she's gonna cave. There's no way that she's nuts enough not to let me go out on Halloween, because everyone goes out on Halloween. And she stuck to it. She stuck to it. She was strong, but she was just like, you crossed the line and that's it. You're not going out. That really stuck with me, But what did she basically do? She demanded respect in that moment. She said, whatever you did, it was way over the line. And I do think you have to do that sometimes in any relationship, in any relationship. I mean, almost every marriage has moments where it's like, what you just did was unacceptable, and I'm going to demand the respect that I deserve. I mean, it happens in a relationship, and that's not wrong. That's an appropriate setting of boundaries. I remember there was another time where Morgan remembers this. We had certain kind of levels in our school for social, basically like social, like our behavior, and like you had to have different achievements. And one of the levels that you had to achieve, it was very difficult, is you had to, basically go 15 days where you had to accomplish your jobs without being reminded. You had to be respectful. You had to be on time for everything. There were like all these different rules. And on day 15, it was my last day. Like I had gone for 15, straight days. And, she asked me to do one of my jobs. It was like sweeping the patio, something like that. And like 13-year-old or whatever, maybe I was 10. I don't remember. It was around those teenage years. And I was just like talking back, being really rude. And she was just like, yep, you're starting all 15 days all over again. And I said to her, no, like my other friends are getting it. You're gonna make me do the 15 days all over again, how dare you? I've been so good. I tried to use every form of guilting her that I could. And again, I thought, oh, she's gonna break. She never broke. I think you can agree, Maureen, like our mom, like when she set her mind to something, it was like, that's it. But again, like these are just forms of, when you've done everything from your side to show respect to your child, you do have to sometimes lay down the law and demand it from them. And I think a lot of the time moms have difficulty with that. I think it's tough for moms.
Yeah, I think it is hard to lay down. It's funny, the original name for the code of conduct was the law. I don't know, was that Glenn who named it
Yeah,
that? Someone,
he
yeah.
called it the law.
Yeah, it's the law, because this is how you create really mature, capable people who are empathetic towards others. Like, it's very hard, I think, to become a narcissist, right? Like when you have the law about what it means to be a good person, especially I think as your child gets older. I mean, obviously with a younger child, things are a little bit more fluid, but I think when a kid gets to a certain age, it's so important for them. And it's so important to understand. This is why I harp on boundaries all the time, because the only way to teach your child boundaries is to show them boundaries, is to say, no, this is mom's time to go running. You're staying with dad and I'm leaving, it's like, this is, and then your kid goes, oh, mom takes care of herself. Okay. Right. But boundaries and kind of laying down the law. And because I think there's also the other side to this, that it actually makes a child feel very safe and secure to know that there is a limit. I think that children who live in these households that are like limitless and there's no rules, it's so unsafe. There's no boundaries. It's like,
I find that with parents who have that, we don't have many parents on our program with the philosophy, but kind of like the anything goes philosophy, like don't correct children, don't say no, which I know there are some parents who actually believe you should never say no to their child. That those children, when I see them, tend to be very anxious kids. It's like they're and of course, like when they go out into the real world and they can't do everything they want, it's devastating.
It's crippling. It's crippling.
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah. Such a good point.
So Morgan, let me just give 2 examples of demanding respect from moms on our program. So there was one mom, her name is Blanca, and her daughter's name is also Blanca. And her daughter was perfectly capable of feeding herself, but refused to. She would act like a princess and like demand that others feed her. And by the way, when Blanca started our program, she was blind, immobile, couldn't speak. And so she learned to see, learned to walk, learned to talk. So she was a very severely brain injured child. And often the more injured a child is, it's often harder for parents to demand the respect from the child, because they kind of have that fragile view of the kid, even when the child gets better sometimes. But anyway, Blanca was refusing, and Blanca had like 4 siblings, and the mom just made a rule one day, which is you don't get up from the table until you finished your food, no matter what. That was mom's rule. And she said for about a week, the other kids would finish the meal, and the mom would say, all right, you guys go and play outside, and Blanca, you're just going to sit here until you finished your food. And was it difficult for her to watch her daughter not play with the siblings? And of course it was difficult, but she did at a certain point just say, that's it, And I do think sometimes parents just have to say, that's it. And by the way, Blanca, learned to feed herself, and it wasn't a problem after a week.
And I think to talk a little bit about the week, sometimes behavior is so bad, you actually have to think about it like, this is our priority this week. And if the program gets done, great. If it doesn't, oh well, like we have to handle this, and sometimes that's the case. And I think go for it, because ultimately your life will be so much better if you can just handle it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And on the other side of things, there was another child, his name was Nikolai, who he was just calling all the shots at home. Like he would just pick and choose the different programs that he would do.
Another example of a kid who started, right? It wasn't he in mobile?
Yeah, he was blind and immobile. Yeah, exactly.
Like so hard. Like, both examples. That's interesting. Yeah.
But in both of these cases, they were families who were on the program for a while, and he was just calling the shots. And parents did something which probably parents should do more, which is, listen, if you're not going to work with me, you're going to experience boredom. And most children, when they experience boredom, will realize that activity is much better than boredom. And they were like, fine, we're just going to take, you don't want to do the program, sit in your room, we're going to take all your toys, and you just sit there and experience boredom. And lo and behold, he came around to doing the program, right? And listen, I'm not saying that this is not something that should be happening often in your home, but I am saying that sometimes when you hit a limit with something, you've got to do it. Because most parents will do this with their well children, but they're kind of afraid to do it with their child with special needs. But sometimes you have to. Morgan, I'm not sure if you remember this, but there were times where our parents as well would be like, if we were, creating problems, it was like, all right, you just go and experience boredom. Like, go up to your room, don't play with anything, just, sit there.
And too, the whole like go to your room thing. This is an interesting one because, that's when I'm helping a family implement Katie's program, right, which is this step up from code of conduct, usually a consequence is you go to your room. And right. A lot of it's funny because there's become it. I mean, we've talked about this a lot, but it's like the Jordan Peterson versus the Gabor Mate. Like, you should never put a kid in the corner or in their room because they'll feel like you don't care about their emotions.
Right. They won't.
And I literally had a mother talk to me about this the other day. And my feeling is when a child goes to their room, it's not just about the feeling of boredom. It's also the feeling of I'm being left out and I'm not included. And I think that actually sometimes that is really important when it comes to horrible behaviors. Like, a child should know that if you hit someone, you're not going to be allowed in common society. Like, that's just not going to happen. Absolutely. Right? So it's an important lesson for a lot of kids. And I agree. I think so many kids with special needs don't experience boredom. There's this constant, like, they must be working all the time. And it's a really good way to say, hey, this is not okay, and it needs to stop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I rarely find, I've heard a lot of debates on, child rearing. And so I've heard those same discussions that you talk about, but I tend to find people either fall into the, you know, children should do whatever they want field, that side, or more of the kind of like children should be seen, not heard crowd, which is kind of like impose rules. But you rarely hear about, you know, um, the importance of having both rules, but also listening to your child and acknowledging them and
Right.
respecting them. So,
Absolutely.
it all goes hand in hand.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Since we're kind of getting to time, I have two more questions, one submitted from a mom, and then we'll get
Right.
into questions for people on the live. So if anybody here wants to ask questions, you're welcome to start putting them in the chat. Um, do you have anything else though to say around this before we move forward?
Um, I mean, obviously, another thing to just show respect for a child, we don't insult them or make disparaging comments around
Oh
them.
God, this is a big
I think,
one.
yeah. The I think that I do hear parents sometimes make disparaging comments around their kids. The one actually I hear the most is he's lazy. I hear many parents in my office say, "Oh, he's lazy," and I'm like, "Oh, do you creep the 1,600
Yeah,
meters with him
400
every
meters a
day?"
day. Yeah. Have you
Yeah.
ever actually done all 400 meters?
Yeah. um, but yeah, I think that's important. Um,
Yeah, and
and obviously, I don't mean correcting. You can correct your child, because correction can, is a part of expecting the best from them. So that correction can be very respectful if it's done in the right way. Morgan, just about demanding respect,
yeah,
I did
please.
say that it's very important when you demand respect. It doesn't just mean your child; it could be anyone. It's very important that you're strong in your communication, but that you don't lose your temper. Um, if you scream and lose your temper or fall apart, that's not going to be respected, right? So you have to be strong in the way you communicate it. You have to be direct, and you have to say what exactly needs to be changed, right? And then the consequences if it doesn't change. Okay.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean,
yeah.
totally agree with you on this. It's really important to handle your own nervous system. And that means take some deep breaths. And sometimes I've had to do that. Like, if I'm with a kid who's having a temper tantrum, I will literally force my lungs open, because sometimes it gets hard. I get it, guys. It's really hard, especially if you're already exhausted and all the things. But it's so important to recognize, and even if it means you walk away for a second and get yourself together, that's fine. It's better
Mhm.
than losing it, as I'm sure you're all aware. So take that time. It's okay. It also, by
Yeah,
the way,
I
your
Morgan,
child.
I walking away should probably be done more.
Yeah.
The I remember when there was a time where my brother and sister-in-law had like a prolonged hospital stay. So Melissa and I had our nephew for a couple of weeks, and he's a great kid. But just like any 2.5-year-old, he would do things sometimes. Sometimes he'd do things that really like put himself at jeopardy. Like I'd be holding him and he'd throw himself back, or in a temper tantrum, I'd be afraid he would hurt himself. But there was once or twice where he really, I don't remember if he hit me or he was throwing a temper tantrum and he wouldn't listen to me, and I just picked myself up and walked out of the room. And interestingly, it shocked him. It was almost like a pattern interrupt where I was just like, all right, when you're ready to talk, we'll talk. And I'd walk out of the room, and then he would be shocked. And then he'd kind of like follow me, and like he was concerned about me. So it completely changed the nature of the conversation. So by the way, sometimes taking that second is good for the other person too, and just being like,
Yes, yes.
walk away.
And you can just
Yeah.
say, you know what, I'm gonna take a second and I'm gonna
Mhm.
go in the next room and mom's gonna breathe.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
actually the great thing is too, it shows your child that they can also do that. And they can also take a moment to regulate our nervous system. I'm sure we've all been in a fight, right? Where you're fighting with someone and you're like, why are we fighting? But you're just trying to one up on each other, you know? That's how you know you're both of you have a nervous system are activated and you need to calm down and you'll probably be fine. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else there, Spencer?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, I have a question here from a mom. My question for Spencer, since I won't be live, my middle daughter is now 8.5. She has always been optimistic, happy child. I've noticed she is more and more huffing, complaining at things this year. She seems more angry. I feel that she has given so much to her siblings over the years. She has a giving nature. Maggie, the brain injured child, demanding all my attention for most of the time. Maggie is the youngest, by the way. And my son has also needed special input at times too. Maybe now she feels it's her time for more attention. Her dad and I always have made sure to have time with her, even when life has been hectic. Any tips for this age and stage? She had to grow up very fast once Maggie was born. I'm thinking maybe she's making up for those years now. Thank you.
This is a good one. So, going back to what we discussed earlier, by the way, the growing up too fast, we can all think of people in our lives who, because of different circumstances, had to put a lot on them at a young age. I do tend to find that most of the time, those people, as they get older, they tend to be very mature. And I think a lot of that has to do with what was expected of them at a young age. But I tend to find that they are very, giving, loving people. And so I say that because I think for, probably this is more of a phase than it is something which is long term. I think that going back to what we were discussing earlier, my guess is, and the mom should let me know how this goes, that instead of focusing on giving her more attention, giving more of the respect, the recognition of everything that she does, and every way that she's contributed, I think is probably the best way to go. Because I think that if she feels she's being respected for what she's done, she actually won't need the attention, and sometimes when kids are using negative ways of getting attention, it's because they've kind of realized that doing positive things isn't getting it for them, right? So yeah, for this mom, I would just be telling this girl a lot how proud she is of her. I almost got a little emotional as you were reading it because I can tell the mom is very proud of her. And I would wonder how often she tells her that. Just saying like, wow, like mom doesn't know what she'd do without you. Like this household would fall apart if it wasn't for you. I need you, and I know that might sound like a lot of pressure, but I think that I think in the end, most likely what this girl desires more than anything else is just to know that she's being recognized for what she's done. So I just try to implement the respect things. And along with that respect, sometimes I'm trying to think of good examples of this. One way of showing respect is titles. So, saying something like, Lisa, the oldest girl, is blank. She's a bedtime director, or just like giving her a title that's, or even just saying no one does this as well as Lisa does. Just saying, she does something well. I'm trying to think of something that she does, but let's say she neatens the shoes, I don't know, by the door, and it's like, wow, Lisa, like, no one does that as well as you do. I think those kind of compliments go a long way. And obviously you don't want them to be, what's the word I'm looking for? When, when you make you compliment someone, but it's demeaning. It's a demeaning compliment.
Condescending? Is it
Condescending. Yeah, you don't want to
condescending?
be condescending. I think there's another word too that I'm looking for, but anyway, you don't want to be condescending, but sometimes a title can go a long way. But I think in the end, just saying like, mom, like no one comes through for mom like you know, like I'm so grateful for your help, you're amazing, and just telling her that a lot. I think it'll actually be more meaningful for her than like, you know, sometimes parents will try to handle these kind of issues by saying, all right, I'm going to take you out alone and do something with you. And I think that's okay once in a while, but I don't think that, I don't think in the end that's actually what the child's seeking. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you bring up a lot of good points. I have some thoughts that came up for me. Don't discount hormonal changes at 8. I mean, things could start be bubbling up, and it just could be part of her growing up process that she's huffing and puffing and starting to express a little bit of that. But my other thought was like to show her respect. Ask her what she thinks about her younger sibling. Ask her what she thinks about the program. Involve her in a big way. Let her know her opinion is valued, and probably she's right. You'll find she's probably the best programmer. Include
Morgan, just to add to what you say, one of my first thoughts as you started talking was ask her more questions.
Yeah.
Because
talk to her, and maybe even take 10 minutes, I don't know, at bedtime, where you just kind of go into her room and just talk to her for a little bit. Ask her what's going on, or how her day was. It doesn't need to be, I think, a big grand thing. I think sometimes just like 5 minutes at night is enough. You know what I mean? Does that resonate with you, Spencer?
Yeah, it does. And actually, one of the things I didn't mention, one of the best ways of showing someone respect is asking for advice, right? We only ask for advice from people we respect. And so asking a kid, hey, what do you think we should do about this? Like in a simple way, it could be like, what should we do next in the program? But that 8-year-old has definitely earned the respect to have different kinds of questions. Hey, how do you think we should handle Maggie when she does this? What do you think is the best activity for us to do in the mornings with Maggie? Asking for advice is a great way. And everyone's probably had that feeling before where someone comes and asks you for advice on something, and it is an honor. You know.
Yeah, and I mean, if I think at this point she should be definitely have a part of the program that's hers and Maggie's, and I think she should be in those programming meetings. Like we've seen plenty of 9-year-olds who are in there writing down notes and giving the staff advice. And it's always, I think, really important. And I'm not saying you're doing this, but I do have one more point. I'm not saying you're doing this because I don't know enough, but I hear this a lot, and I think it does a disservice to everyone. But I think a lot of people project onto siblings who have siblings with special needs that this is so hard. It's so hard for them. And I'm not saying it's not hard, and I'm not saying it's not a pain sometimes, but often I think people think that's the crux of the problem, and often it's not. They love their sibling, and they wouldn't want anything different, and they don't usually know anything different either. So for them, sometimes we can project our fears of, oh, my older kids are going to be so resentful that they have a younger sibling with special needs who's getting all this attention. That could be a parent's fear. Don't project it onto her if that is your fear, because it probably has nothing to do with that. It's probably just something that's going on within her. And so I think pulling it out with just adding so much respect for her will do more than having a fear of what she really thinks. Because I think honestly, the siblings that are included in the program and shown respect and are not, no one's trying to segregate. Like, I find the biggest mistake parents make is when they try and segregate. They try and like give so much attention to the other sibling, they kind of become anxious, and there isn't a close bond between the siblings because of that. I literally met a mother who, her daughter is almost like has more problems than the child who's brain injured, because she like separated them, right, and would give them like each the same amount of time, and now it's like very confusing for both of them. So I don't know if that really makes sense, but I find a lot of people do that, and I feel it does a disservice to everyone, you know. Yeah.
For sure. For sure.
All right, any questions
Oh
from
yeah, Morgan, I do think the thing about saying, oh, it's so hard.
Yeah.
First of all, acknowledging like it's much better to compliment someone for their effort than acknowledging how hard something is, right? So, if a child isn't I learned this from Dad when he was coaching us when we were kids with running. He would never say, oh, it's hard, because he would say something like, you're doing so great, you're so you're being so tough, you're working so hard, something like that. But yeah, acknowledging the hard, and I've heard this from a lot of parents of kids with special needs, interestingly, when they explain to a parent, oh, I've got a child with special needs, and someone goes, oh, that's so hard, it just comes off in a way of it's really disempowering, and it doesn't actually make the person feel any better.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyway.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, anybody, you're welcome to unmute yourself if you have questions for Spencer. We'll take a few more minutes for questions. Or you can write in the chat, whichever you like. Ivana, I saw that you unmuted. I'm not sure if that was on purpose or. I have this one question. Something that frustrates a lot of parents is that they don't know if it's a behavior or their child's brain injury. What are your thoughts on that, Spencer?
Yeah, I look a lot at intention. So very often when a child's engaging in a behavior, you can tell their intention by the look on their face and in their eyes. Like, in other words, like, are they trying to do something which is to gain attention, or are they trying to create havoc or be disrespectful? And parents really have to watch intention very carefully. And intention should be your number one thing. I talked about demanding respect. Intention should be the number one thing that you're looking at when setting boundaries on your child, right? It's it's too, like, maybe the best example of this, right, is one child, by just thoughtlessness, they don't mean anything bad by it, they might walk into a room and knock over a vase and it breaks. They didn't mean anything wrong by it. They need to be more careful, but they didn't mean anything bad by it. That's very different from a child who walks over to the vase and watches their parents as they push it over and it breaks. That's a very bad intention. So first of all, you got to look at intention. And bad intention, you need to come down harder on bad intention to show the child, like, that's not an okay way to go about life, to purposefully create problems for attention, or out of the, even worse, the enjoyment of watching the havoc you create. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that generally, if a child is engaging in some kind of repetitive behavior, that could be like what's called stimming behaviors, hand flapping, looking at lights, playing the same song over and over and over again, things like that. I don't put that in the category of a behavioral issue. That's just pretty much a purely neurological issue, and I don't treat it as a behavioral problem. There is one exception to that, which is children who develop habits that they don't need anymore. So there are children who sometimes develop habits over time, and they actually get to the point in their development where they don't have to do that anymore, but they just kind of keep going back to it because it's what they've always done. And parents, it's kind of part of that respect of like expecting the best out of someone. If you know that your child, for like, I'll use the example Grandpapa always used to give of picking the nose, right? Because like if a child, picks a nose in public and your child's able to control it, it's perfectly fine for you to expect them to no longer do that in public, and come down, on it. So so first of all, look for intention. Then when you're looking at like these kind of neurological behaviors, I would only treat them as a behavioral issue if it's become a habit and your child is able to control it, but they're kind of just choosing to go back to their old habit. Because the thing is, if you can break that habit, they'll stop going back to that behavior. But keep in mind that that's a minority of children on our program. I'm talking about kids who have really come a long way and they just keep going back to that thing because, that's all they've really known. But now they're able to learn, and if a parent's unsure, I'd probably talk it out with the staff coach.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Okay, so Dr. Puja wrote so much information to think and reflect on. I need to introspect and have more analysis about the situation that haven't been great. Enjoying listening to you both. Oh, thank you, Dr. Puja. We love having you here. Okay, well, I guess we'll wrap this up. If anyone has any follow-up questions, you're always welcome to send them my way and we'll see what we can do. And I'll see you all next week at 10:30. We have a mom, Natalia, will be joining us. I'm so excited. She's really wonderful. She did the program with her son. And she will be joining us, at 10:30 Eastern Standard on Thursday. So I'll see you all then. Thank you so much.
Can I just say one other thing for the three people who are still left here?
Yeah.
Do me a personal favor. In the group, when Morgan, you post the recording in the group.
Yes.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
The truth is a lot more moms should have seen this than actually came. Because they probably saw, oh, I have a good relationship with my kid, whatever. So when the recording is posted, if you could just say something along the lines of, wow, this was really helpful, or this piece of advice was helpful, just to get the other moms to watch it. Because I think people need this more than they realize.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Yes, guys. Thank you so much for that help. That would be really amazing. Thank you, Spencer. So great to chat with you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.